Setting up a saltwater aquarium can get insanely expensive, but what if I just grab some sand, rocks, and seaweed from the ocean and put it in a tank without spending a dime? Could it actually work? For 100 days, I let this aquarium run on its own, and things started happening that I did not expect. Seaweed and seagrass began to spread, and all kinds of animals started showing up, others that were honestly pretty weird. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were problems, and a few sad moments too. So let's not waste any time. Let's rewind to the start. I've been building and maintaining aquariums for years, but always freshwater. Saltwater tanks always seemed complicated, and more than anything, expensive. Or at least that's what I thought. Some of you probably saw my video where I set up a small saltwater jar using material from the ocean, and overall, it worked. That's when I got the idea, what if I did the same thing, but bigger? The goal wasn't to keep fish or anything demanding, just rocks, macroalgae, and whatever life came along for the ride. Step 1 was collecting from nature. Nothing fancy, a few rocks, some sand, and most importantly, seaweed. Walking along the shoreline, I found chunks of seaweed and bits of seagrass that the tide had washed up. After collecting a good variety, I filled a few bottles with seawater. Then it was time to head home and set everything up. For this project, I used an old square glass tank I built a few years ago for another experiment. It's not the prettiest tank, but it's perfect for this because it's shallow and has a square footprint. I started with a foundation. It's not really sand, it's more like crushed shell and small pebbles. Even if it doesn't look like it, there are already plenty of little animals hiding in there. Then I added some larger rocks, so things like limpets and snails would have solid surfaces to cling to. Next, I filled the tank with the seawater I collected and moved on to the fun part, adding the seaweed. I left the green algae loose on purpose. The idea was for it to get wedged between the rocks and attach by itself, the way it does in the ocean. Then came the algae and coral pieces that had been getting tossed around by the waves. I had no idea how they'd look later, or if they were even still alive. What happened next felt like magic. Hidden in the seaweed was a tiny crab I hadn't noticed at all. The second I lifted the seaweed out, it dropped straight into the water, and that's when I realized it had been there. It was young, and it immediately started exploring the tank. And of course, I couldn't forget the snails. In this case, they're Trochus snails, great little cleanup crew animals because they graze algae off the glass and rocks. This whole setup is meant to imitate nature and be as hands-off as possible. Specifically, it's recreating a rocky shoreline. It needs water movement. I tested this small filter with the spray bar at the top. It moves the water, breaks the surface, and keeps the tank well oxygenated. I added a couple bigger rocks that stick up above the waterline, so the crab, or anything else that wants to, can climb out. That was it. The tank was ready. Now I just had to let it settle and see what I'd find. Almost a week later, not much had changed. I rearranged the crab's rock pile and moved it to one side. The crab, as expected, likes feeling protected, and those rocks are perfect for that. But when the pile was in the back, I basically never saw it. Moving it to the side kept it safe, without making it feel exposed. Filming this little crab isn't easy. It's shy, and I have to keep my distance, because the moment I get too close, it darts into the rocks or even buries itself. What is that rock? If my eyes aren't playing tricks on me, it's moving. That's not a rock at all. It's a limpet, perfectly camouflaged thanks to algae growing on its shell. Along with limpets, these snails play a big role too. They eat algae and decaying plant material. In return, they recycle nutrients back into the system. It's a loop, basically a closed cycle. So by day 6, we already knew we had a crab and multiple snails, which is honestly a lot. But this ecosystem is hiding hundreds of little creatures. Here are a few I found. Behind the filter, I spotted a couple of surprises, like this huge amphipod, basically a giant scud. And when I say huge, the freshwater scuds I'm used to are usually under half an inch. This one is a little over an inch long, and it swims insanely fast. The other surprise, mussels. These are like living filters, and besides filtering the water by feeding on phytoplankton and bacteria, they can actually move around, which I didn't fully appreciate until I saw it myself. This one is small and crawls around looking for a good spot. And over here you can see a larger one tucked into the coral. Watch how it cracks its shell open slightly and filters the water passing by. As you can see, there are different types of seaweed in here. And they're not just for looks. They're food and they're shelter. About a month in, I discovered two things. One of them would permanently change this aquarium. The first one was scary. I saw the crab sitting still, looking pale and whitish. I thought he had died. But then I saw the crab again in its usual spot. I was so confused until it clicked. It wasn't a dead crab. It was a molt. I'm not gonna lie, that one got me. Then, while scanning the glass, I noticed a small green sea slug. It looked harmless, but this little animal was about to cause the biggest wipeout this tank had seen. Soon I started finding more of them in different colors. The most shocking was this yellow one, absolutely massive. I actually liked them. They seemed peaceful. At the time, I had no idea they were about to become the problem. Within just a few days, the green seaweed was almost completely gone. And these animals were growing fast. They were sea hares, a type of sea slug that can reach about pounds and grow up to roughly inches long. And they were mowing through the green seaweed that had filled the aquarium. Keeping them in the tank didn't make sense, so I removed them and took them back to the ocean. But before I let them go, they put on a show. I never imagined a slug could swim like that, like a butterfly flying through the water. It was wonderful. I released them right where I collected them. Hopefully they do well out there. Almost 2 months in, the aquarium was still stable. The green color was basically gone because of the sea hares, but it wasn't all bad. When I brought a light close to the surface, I could see hundreds of tiny animals gathering. This is plankton, and plankton isn't one species. It's a whole community of organisms drifting in the water. The most common you'll recognize are copepods, tiny crustaceans like the ones you see here. And it's not all microscopic. Remember that huge amphipod from earlier? I finally got good footage of it. I caught it right in the foreground. It's unsettling and mesmerizing at the same time. Just imagine how strong it is. It can even shift small rocks on the bottom without much effort. Around this stage, I was still finding surprises. One time, when I switched the aquarium light on, I saw something fairly large shoot across the tank at high speed. It was almost impossible to film because it was so fast. I decided to take it out to look at it more closely, but honestly, I was just as confused. I had no idea what kind of worm it was. I guess some mysteries stay mysteries. So I put it back and let it go about its business. Now we reach day 100, the end of this journey. The bright green seaweed is gone, but the tank didn't turn into a dead wasteland. Actually, the opposite. Brown seaweed and seagrass have taken over a lot of the space, creating shelter and food. Sadly, not everything made it through the full 100 days. One of the limpets crawled up onto the upper glass and never moved again, turning its shell into a tomb. And if we look closely at the plankton, besides the copepods, there's something new. A small worm. The way it moves looks familiar. Wait, could it be the offspring of that larger worm I saw weeks ago? We'll see as they grow. One thing that really stands out is that there's way less plankton now. Before, there were thousands of tiny specks near the light. Now, there are far fewer. And there's a reason for that. One you can find hiding in the dark. This species of crab is extremely adaptable. It eats whatever's available, and if there's plenty of plankton, it's not going to pass that up. You can see it here, grabbing particles drifting by and pulling them in to eat. And I can tell you this, the crab has never gone hungry. It adapted so well that it actually built its own little cave, pushing rocks out of the way. That's where it spends most of its time when it's not out hunting. Over these 100 days, he grew a lot. Honestly, I'd say it doubled in size. This is how it looked on the day he arrived, and this is how he looks now. He didn't just get longer, he got much stockier. I've read these crabs can get even bigger, reaching around inches across, including the legs. Maybe one day I'll have to set it free, but let's not get sad, because there's more. After more than 3 months, new life kept appearing. I found a new species of tiny snail. They don't get bigger than a few millimeters, but they're incredibly active. I could watch them crawl around for hours. Overall, there are tons of microorganisms now that weren't obvious at the start. New amphipods and fairly large worms slowly weaving through the rocks. This one, I think, is a ribbon worm searching the bottom for food. Even down here, if I speed up the footage, you can see movement almost everywhere. Life is hiding in every corner. And some animals, even though they're tiny, are surprisingly curious, like this one, a skeleton shrimp, moving in that weird, alien way through the seaweed. And speaking of seaweed, it didn't just colonize the rocks. It even took over the filter. It's grown into every little crack in surface where it can get a grip. And honestly, instead of seeing that as a problem, I think it's amazing. Sooner or later, nature always wins against anything artificial. When I first set this up, I didn't have much hope it would work. I was worried the ecosystem would crash after a few days, and I'd be left with nothing but death and decay. But once again, nature surprised me. Nature gets all the credit. All I did was put a small piece of the ocean into a glass box and give it light and water movement. I hope you enjoyed this experiment as much as I did. I'll be posting updates on this project in the future, so subscribe if you don't want to miss them. And in the meantime, you can watch this other video where I do something similar. But instead of ocean material, I use plants and algae from a river. As you'd expect, all kinds of life shows up. Thanks for watching.